the more you think about something, the less forgetful that thing becomes to you. In other words, the more you think about something, the more difficult it becomes to forget it if you ever wanted to. So, if you ever find yourself thinking intensely about something for days, weeks, maybe months or longer, it's not always easy to forget that thing, person, place, whatever it is that you were thinking about. Because when you think about something obsessively, when you ruminate about something, the more you think about that, the more it becomes a part of your reality. You've created that thing as being a part of your reality. It's become a more vivid part of your experience. You've created certain emotional bonds to it, for better or worse, certain connections that are not so easy to let go of and forget. So, how can people like narcissists use that to their advantage? Because narcissists, they like to be remembered by others. They like when other people think about them and can't forget them. I mean, obviously, narcissists can do a lot of things to you that might be memorable, that you might, not easily forget, like the intense love bombing, that's good. The devaluation, when it comes, is bad. They might do and say things that hurt you. But what really gets you obsessively thinking about the narcissist is the cognitive dissonance. So narcissists know that cognitive dissonance, when they can instill that in their target, that person will obsessively try to make sense of the narcissist and what the narcissist does, who the narcissist is, what they're about, what they're saying. It's like the narcissist says they care about you. They've never had anybody as special as you in their life. But then all of a sudden, they forget your birthday. They don't meet you at the restaurant for dinner when they're supposed to, and they pretend like it's no big deal. Maybe they promise to get you a certain present. They forget to get you the present, and they just pretend it's no big deal. And so many other things. So narcissists will do and say things to really confuse you, where you just can't make sense of the different versions of the story they're giving you. They'll say one thing, they do something else. Or they'll say one thing now and they'll say something completely different tomorrow. And the next day they'll say something different again. And the day after that they'll revert back to, the other version. What they're doing is they're confusing you. Us human beings, we like to make sense out of things. We like to be able to make basic sense out of important things. Like, where we stand with people. If we care about somebody and that person says they care about us, and it seems like they mean it when they say it, but then they do or say something that just completely contradicts that, your mind at some level just trying to work that out, but it can't, because you can't reconcile two mutually exclusive outcomes, two stories that are incompatible. And that's what the narcissist is always doing. They're feeding you incompatible stories, but they're trying to make you think that each story in its own right is true, is real. As they feed you one, it's as if that's the reality. As if when they feed you another, it's as if that's the reality. But the two cannot coexist. It's not possible. And that's what cognitive dissonance is all about. And narcissists are constantly feeding that to you in different ways, shapes, and forms. They know just how to create dissonance within you, to get your mind working overtime, trying to make sense of things. Sometimes you don't even realize that you're in a state of cognitive dissonance, but you are. And what you'll find that you'll never have felt so intensely about somebody. Never would you have so intensely thought about, ruminated about, just analyze the person in your head like you would the narcissist, because other people tend to be more straight shooters. You get what you see. There's a certain consistency, but you don't have that consistency with narcissists. On the surface, they try to come across as if they're consistent, but actually, they're feeding you conflicting information all the time. But that's what gets you addicted to them. You get addicted because you're full on trying to work it out. You're overwhelmingly thinking about them, trying to make sense of something that you can't make sense out of. You kind of become all consumed by that. And over time, you have all these stories that are conflicting that you can't make sense out of. And then, which also means that when you're dealing with a narcissist, you never know which part of the story you're going to get. Are you going to get the good version of them, the bad version? The future faking that they talked about today, are they going to say that those future fake promises are going to materialize? Are they going to make you think that's going to materialize one day? Or are they going to all of a sudden put on the other persona to say, oh, they'll never do that with you. It was all, wishful thinking on your part. The point I'm making is you always have this kind of flip side of flip sides of the same story. Like, it's going to happen, it's not. They love you, they don't. So on and so forth. And you can never really come to a satisfying conclusion. But that creates a certain addiction, and that means that you do become very strongly bonded to this person. The trauma bond and all these dependencies become much stronger with the cognitive dissonance. That just means your mind is always thinking about them. It's like you can never really stop thinking about them and let your thoughts settle into other things until you can work them out. But since you can never work them out, they become your everything. You become all consumed by them almost. So that's just for you to have an idea of how some people can get you almost addicted to them, very dependent on them, kind of all consumed by them, obsessively thinking about them. And a lot of that has to do with the cognitive dissonance and the fact that your brain works overtime trying to work them out. And you often don't realize what's happening. But of course, narcissists and these people, they may not always do it deliberately on purpose, but at some level they do know the effectiveness of cognitive dissonance, and that's when they lash that out, in just the right ways, to get you really hooked on them. And it's very effective. Even if you understand what they're doing, it can still be effective. It's not as effective because you can counter it and you can kind of override it some by saying, I know this is bullshit. But it's still hard. It's still very difficult.